As we're starting with 6.3, we're going to talk about powers of 10. We're going to have negative and zero exponents, as well as a little bit of scientific notation. On this video, I'm going to only get through the negative and zero exponents. I'll do a separate one for scientific notation. So as we do a warm-up, I'd like you to think about the negative and zero exponents, simplify this expression. Well, we already know any number divided by itself is 1, right? So let's put that little side rule over here. Any number divided by itself is 1. Well, I know that, but I also know my rules of math here. So we're going to say exponent rules say 10 to the third minus the third gives me 10 to the 0 power, which means the rule that we learned before that is any value to the 0 power equals 1. Right. So now, so anything to, again, any value to the 0 power equals 1. That's a rule. Now, the next piece we're going to go through is completing this table so you can kind of show why. So as I move left, look at this, as I move left, each number is multiplied by 10. So I'm like basically multiplied by 10, multiplied by 10, multiplied by 10. And notice my powers are changing. So 10 to the first, I'm going to start here. 10 to the first power is 10. 10 to the second power is 100, right? Because I'm multiplying by 10. But going the other direction, if this is multiplying to the left, this is going to be dividing by 10 or multiplying by 1/10. So multiply by 1/10. Okay, so in this case, if it's going this way, so if I'm multiplying by 1/10, this is going to go down on my exponent. So this is 10 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1, which is 1 over 1, right? 10 to the first power is 10, which means 10 over 1. 10 to the second power is 100 as a fraction. That looks like 100 over 1. Now, this is 1,000, so it's going to be 1,000 over 1. Now, keep going through. When I multiply by 1/10, I'm actually dividing by 10, right? So multiplying by 1/10 means divide by 10. Multiply by 1/10 means divide by 10. So this divided by 10 gives me 1 over 1 times 1/10 is 1/10. If I multiply that by 1/10, 1 times 1 is 1, 10 times 10 is 100. Times 10 gives me 1 over 1,000. So this is going to be 10 to the 0. This is going to be 10 to the negative 1 because I've moved it down to the bottom. 10 to the negative 2 moves it down to the bottom. 100. 10 to the second is 100. So now it's to the bottom, 1 over 100. So this is going to be 10 to the negative third, which means it's moved to the bottom, right? Now as a decimal, this is 10, this is 1. This is going to be 0.1, 0.01, 2 decimals, 0.001. So as we look at this and it says what is the multiplier as you move right is going to be 1/10. How does each of these multipliers affect the placement of the decimal? Well, it moves the decimal 1 place value. So now using those patterns, if I have 10 to the negative 7th, we realize that that means 1 over 10 to the 7th, which would give me 1 over a 1 with 7 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There you go. This next one is going to be 1 over 10 to the 5th, which now is 1 over 1 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. Write this with a single exponent. Well, this is going to be 10 to the what power? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 zeros altogether. So this is 10 to the 8th power. So now, using that same pattern, I've got 10 to the negative n. So that we know the negative means it goes to the bottom, so it's going to be 1 over 10, and then it becomes a positive exponent, so it's to the nth power. So here are some little rules to get us there, but let's think about this. It's going to be x Well, it's going to be 1 over x to the m because it goes to the bottom. So right now it's on top, it's going to move to the bottom. So as we finish this, this is going to be x to the negative fifth, which really means it goes to the bottom. So it's 1 over x to the fifth. This is like it's all over 1. This portion needs to move to the bottom. So it's going to be 3 over n squared. On this problem, we're going to actually do the rules we already know. We're going to multiply 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. X, 8, add those exponents, 8 plus a negative 7. So I get negative 18 x to the first, or just x. This following one, I can either distribute that negative 2 to each thing, or I can say, well, that whole quantity is to the negative 2 power, so it's going to be 1 over 3x cubed, and then to the second power, make that positive on the outside. And so now I can distribute that to each item, and I end up with 1 over 3 squared x to the 6th power, which gives me 1 over 9x to the 6th. All right, the following ones, I'd like you to try a few of these all the way through as we get to them. Pause me at any point in time and try them on your own. So this first one, I end up with doing the same thing. I would actually say that it's 1 over 5y squared now to the second power because I moved it to the bottom. And then I would distribute this. So I get 1 over 5 squared y to the 4th, which is 25y to the 4th. F. Same thing on F. I'm going to bring it to the bottom. So I end up with 1 over parentheses negative 8x to the 5th, y to the negative 4th, now raised to the second power. Do the distributive property. I'm going to show it up top here. It's going to be 1 over. This is going to be 2 negatives, makes it a positive. 8 to the second power, which is 64. X to the 10th, y to the negative 8. So 64 x to the 10th, but this y to the negative 8 has to move up top, so it's going to be y to the 8th. The following one, I'm just going to say, well, one way to say it was h to the 4 minus 6, which would give me h to the negative 2, which means it goes to the bottom. So 1 over h squared. Or I could simply say, looking at this, where do I have more, top or bottom? Bottom, by how many? 2. And I get 1 over h squared. This next one, I would actually move this to the bottom and say it's k squared on the bottom. A 1 is my placeholder. So I get 1 over k to the 9th. We have 14 over 7. That reduces to 2. Where do I have more w's? Oh, this w has to move up, so it's w squared. So now I have 2w, 4 and 2 is 6. On j, I'm going to reduce that fraction. So 32 divided by 8 is 4. The a is going to come up top here, so a squared with that a to the 5th. So now I have 4a to the 7th. This b goes to the bottom, b to the, I believe that's a 3. Let me double check that. Yep, 3. So I end up with b to the 3rd down there. So b to the 6th and b to the 3rd gives me b to the 9th. Oops. But it's on the bottom. There we go. The next one, let's multiply the top. 6 times 5 is 30. A to the 3rd and a to the 9th is a to the 12th. Cross that off. Now I can simplify. 30 and 12, they can both be divided by 6. So 30 divided by 6 is 5. Negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. I have more a's on bottom, so a squared. So now I have fraction. It's a negative fraction. 5 over 2a squared. Now stick with me because this next one is a doozy, but we only have 3 of these we're going to go through, and then we are done. This is the biggest one. These other 2, I made them a lot nicer. So this is the biggest one that we're going to do. And then we're done for this set of notes before we get to the scientific notation on the next set. So on top, I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible. Here we go. I've got 2 negatives makes it a positive. 6 squared, x to the 8th, because 4 times 2 is 8. 6 times 2 is 12. On bottom, that's a 3. So I'm going to say 3 negatives is a negative. 4 to the 3rd power. X to the, and again, oops. That's a -3 down there, right? So I'm going to say, maybe this way so we can see it. Oops. So this is going to be x to the -2 times 3 gives me -6. Y to the 5 times 3 9, this is 9. So it's going to be -3 times 3, excuse me, is -9. And 5 times 3 is 15. From there, I'm going to move things. So this first one is going green. This is going to give me 36. X to the 8th, y to the 12th. I'm going to cross that off, cross that off. On the bottom, this is a 3. So it's 4 to the 3rd, x to the -9th, y to the 15th. I need to move this guy to the top. And 4 to the 3rd power means 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. So I've got -64 down here. And now I can reduce it. So I'm going to reduce any top with any bottom. So 36 over 84. Well, that can both be divided by 4. If I divide by 4, I get 9. And divide this by 4, I get 1/16. And it's negative, so that takes care of that part. My x's, I end up with 8 and 9 of them, so it's 17 of them. And my y's, I've got more y's on the bottom by 3, so y cubed. So if I take care of my answer here, nice and tidy, I've got on top 9x to the 17th over -16 y to the 3rd. That was a lot, and I know that. Part of that's tenacity, part of that's just grit. Stick with it. The next one, quick and easy. It's negative on the bottom, bring it to the top. So it's x to the 5th. And this following one, I really want you to, find out what the question mark is. So this question mark is down on the bottom. So 10, and what is on the bottom to give me -15? So it's really x to the 10 minus what value equals 15 negative. Well, that value would be 25. So the question mark is equal to 25. And that's it. We should be able to do all of our all of our boom cards, etc., everything for the checkpoints 1 all the way through 7 at this point. Scientific notation is coming up next. You should also be able to do your exponent PFA.